Thank you so much for joining us today for the Pastor's Potluck podcast. Here on the Pastor's Potluck, it's similar to a normal potluck where you might get something that you want and there may be something that you just want to pass up altogether. And that's okay. There's something here for everybody. Our goal here is to encourage you and maybe in the process entertain you. If you're ready, let's dig in. Well, hey, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Pastor's Potluck podcast. Today's an interesting one. I think we have Meghan Beha, who is Pastor Scott's wife, and then we also are joined by my wife, Erica Bodker.
Woohoo!
Yay!
Should be fun.
Pastor's wife.
Pastor's wife,
Yay.
pastor, right there.
Yeah, pastors. But, well, the focus is not that. The focus is pastors' wives.
I know. I'm just saying, you're the one interviewing your wife about pastors' wives.
Yes. And I think that this is going to be a really interesting conversation because her and I have had some pretty good conversations. And I also wanted to kind of get the perspective from a lead pastor's wife as well, because I feel that lead pastors' wives are under a stronger microscope, so to speak, and trying to see and watch and make sure that you're doing the right thing. Not that it's not there for her, because it is for Erica, because she's felt that kind of like pushback and that kind of the conversation, so to speak. But I kind of want to just start off things with a pretty simple and easy question. What was going through your mind whenever Scott was first getting into ministry? Like, you're like, wait a minute, like this is real now. Like, what were some of the thoughts and the emotions that you had whenever Scott started? Like, you know, like he came home and he was just like, I got the job. I'm going to be a pastor.
Our story is pretty interesting. It's not, I did not grow up in a pastor's household, which from what I gather is a lot of people's story that are pastors' wives.
Yeah.
Typically, not all the time. But so that said, I came at that from a different perspective as a volunteer family. I grew up in church. My parents were not in ministry. They may as well have been, but they weren't. They served every time the doors were open, every event. And so I already had a taste of what ministry was like without having that spotlight, that pressure on us. And so I honestly feel very blessed that was my story. Because when that time came for Scott he told me that it was like shortly after he got saved that he felt called into full-time ministry. And it just was like, well, duh. I mean, because you know Scott, there's not a whole lot of things that professionally he would really do well.
Yeah.
And I say that to say that, like, it's not that he's like not multi-talented or anything like that. It's just he's got to be passionate about something or he will not do it. And so when he told me one time that he wanted to be a principal, and he said it was because he wanted to be able to lead, but he wanted to have that flexible, or he wanted to be a teacher. I think it was. He wanted to be able to teach, but he wanted to have that flexible schedule. He didn't want there to be like this rigid whatever. And I'm just like, man, I just can't see you with kids. Like, for some reason, kids love him. But I'm like, I just can't see you teaching kids because you just don't have that kind of patience. And then when he said, I feel called into full-time ministry, I'm like, it clicked. So I was immediately like at peace about it. There was no doubt. There was no worry. And for me, there was really no anxiety because I had been kind of like, I don't want to say like, what's the word? I wasn't really it's like programmed, but not. Like, it was just part of my life already.
Yeah.
Without me having to feel that pressure to do it. So I was like, I mean, it was cool.
Yeah. What about for you, Erica? Because this part of our story we don't really talk about. We talk about like before we got married and after we got married and some of the struggles that we did like really early on in our marriage. But so whenever you started working and I was staying home for 2 years, whatever it was, working on my sobriety and all of that, like what were some thoughts that went through your mind, like whenever the opportunity presented itself for me to go work at the church?
So do you mean when you got called to ministry or when you went, like, you got your first job?
Like, well,
because there's
both.
a big difference there for me.
So both.
Okay, so the first time was like I was okay with you going into ministry. There was nothing wrong with that, but the timing like sucked because I was wanting to go back to school.
Yeah.
And I couldn't go back to school because I needed to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
So like there was nothing wrong with it. I didn't see an issue with it. I was just like, man, this timing sucks.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was a God thing because I wouldn't have been able to finish school if I would have started school. So
yeah.
It goes both ways now looking back at it.
Yeah.
As for ministry, I mean, I loved my job, but at the same time, whenever I was ready to be done with my job, because it was night shift.
Yeah.
And it was running havoc on my body. So when you got your job at the church the first time, it was like a blessing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's how I felt.
Yeah. Was there anything that you were like, man, like this is completely out of the ordinary for me? Because I had worked the whole time you knew me, and even a decade before that, I was working in bars. And so was it like one of those things where you were like, man, like God sees something in him that he don't see?
No. Well, the way you just said that, yes, God always saw more in you than you saw in yourself,
yeah.
Because you are not a person that sees good things in yourself automatically. And I always saw good things in you that you didn't see in yourself.
Yeah.
So that was a big plus. I think I remember like the first time I finally, like, I think I begged you for weeks to drum.
Yeah.
To drum.
Yeah.
And you finally drummed, and I was like, okay, this like is a stepping stone.
Yeah.
And then just kind of went from there, and it was just kind of a blessing, I guess.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that, and we can fast forward a little bit in our stories a little bit. One of the things that I've noticed is that there's this certain kind of like lifestyle that is expected of pastors' wives. There's this certain type of look. There's a certain type of conversations you're supposed to have. There's these obligations that people put on pastors' wives that they are supposed to be doing certain things. I want to talk a little bit about that and maybe some areas, some things that like conversations that y'all have had with people as well. I know that, both of y'all have tattoos, both of y'all have nose rings. And so the look aspect of it doesn't fit what most people would expect a pastor's wife to look.
Do you have issues in this? This is the only church y'all have been at, right? You haven't been at any other church?
No.
So you've never had that issue?
No.
Yeah. I think you're just talking about me, babe.
Well, but I think we offer a contrasting perspective to that.
Yeah.
Which I think will be interesting for people to hear.
Yeah. So, Erica, since yours has been a negative experience in that, talk a little bit about that and maybe just like an instance where somebody was just like, hey, you got to do this or whatever it could be.
Oh, there's so many though.
Yeah.
So since day one, you can't do that. You're a pastor's wife now.
Yeah.
Like, I got told that all the time.
Yeah.
You can't do that. You're a pastor's wife now.
Yeah, you can't color. You can't dye your hair that color.
You're
a pastor's wife.
You need to take that off of Facebook. You're a pastor's wife now.
Let me ask you this. Was that people that, like, let's just say, was that your Jared's boss's spouse or someone on staff, or was
a lot
that
of different
family?
a lot. It wasn't just one person. It was multiple people.
Like predominantly,
yeah.
Was it?
Yeah, it was
It
people
was
in
women.
the congregation.
It was women.
People in the
Mostly,
congregation.
Yeah.
Oh, that's terrible.
Mentor women that you would look up to, like older. I mean, it was the older generation, maybe a couple younger, but yeah, that's actually the reason why I dye my hair. Like, we've only gone on a couple of church interviews, but I always made sure my hair was a different color when we went, because
So they would know.
if they had something to say about it, then that wasn't the church for us.
Yeah.
Because it had gotten to a point to where, like, even I joke about it with my sister-in-law now. Like, it's a joke that we're like, oh, you're a pastor's wife, you can't do that. Like, that's just like a thing now.
Yeah.
Because it was such a big deal. I mean, every little bitty thing I did, it didn't matter if it was like, and it wasn't that I did crazy things. It really wasn't. I mean, piercing my nose, dyeing my hair. If I even talked about getting a new tattoo, like, Jared's not going to get a job that's going to like mess up his future if you get a tattoo on your arm. Like, you can't do that. You're a pastor's wife now.
Maybe in some churches, but.
Yeah, it's just like this. Goodness gracious, this viewpoint is just so. And it's one of the things I love about Scott and the way he talks about these things. He's like, look, is Jesus like King of Kings and Lord of Lords? Yes. Was he born of a virgin, and he died, and 3 days later he rose again, and then we're gonna be with him for all of eternity? Yes. Okay, great. If we can agree on those things, then all the secondary issues, like, it doesn't matter. And that's what I get so frustrated about, is because I feel like it's not here, but there's a lot of churches that spend, like the congregation, spend a lot of time more nitpicking what an individual looks like as opposed to what their heart looks like.
Yeah.
And
well, what is your outtake on it before we move on? Like, because you said we have different viewpoints on that.
So it is a different situation with me having been here for a long time, actually forever. However, a lot of the people that went here when I was growing up, they don't go here anymore. Like, they go to other churches, they live in other states, they've passed away. Like, there's a very small percentage of people that still attend here. However, the rest of the people that attend here have only been attending since Scott and I have been in ministry here.
Yeah.
So when they come into our church and they see who I am, how I dress, just the features, like that I have a tattoo, that I have my nose pierced, whatever, that's just, well, if you don't like it, then you can go somewhere else. Because actually Scott doesn't even like me having my nose pierced, but I had it pierced when I was graduated from high school. I loved it. I wanted it done again. It's just, it is what it is. But it's just.
So you're getting the blowback from Scott.
Oh yeah. He's really the only person that ever gives me any crap for what I do. Like, cut my hair, color it, get anything pierced, whatever. He's a little traditionalist, but, no, it's just, I have never been in a place where people have made me feel an expectation of how I should. Obviously, like, I don't want to come in on a Sunday morning smelling like a bar, or
for sure.
You want to look put together, but I am very upfront with my life before Christ. Scott is as well, so people kind of know that. So we are a little bit non-traditional. We're a little bit rough around the edges, and we don't hide that. And so if you have an issue with that, you have an issue with a lot of people in our church. And so I kind of feel, and I don't do what I do or dress how I dress to make other people feel comfortable. This is just who I am. Mm-hmm. And I do think that by default, it makes people feel comfortable. Like, a couple of weeks ago, Landon was in the state tournament and Scott wasn't preaching. So we came to church, like we were here for both services, but I was in like cut off jean shorts and a t-shirt. And I don't like, no one looked at me like, oh my gosh, she's wearing that.
She's wearing shorts.
No, I mean, no one said anything. No one hinted at anything. Yeah. I did not feel uncomfortable, out of place or anything like that. And I think really that's just the culture that we have desired for this church for so long.
Yeah.
And that's what the culture of Southridge is. You know, and so I, in that sense, have never felt like someone has looked down on me because of whatever.
The way that you dressed,
right,
or the way that you cut your hair. Yeah, it is an interesting take, and it's one of the things that we love about this place is that, like, we can come as we are. There's not this. We've cut a lot of the pomp and circumstance out of church. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We sing, we preach, we ask people if they want to respond to this, and we sing another song, and then we're done. We don't have all the frills and the traditions of doing church in a certain way. Like we try new things,
right,
and we try to make people about as comfortable as they can whenever they come to church, because so many times whenever you walk into maybe another church and you come in a jeans and a t-shirt and everybody else is dressed in suits and really nice dresses or whatever,
mm-hmm,
that instance can be very like a daunting task almost. Like you're like, oh man, I feel completely out of place here.
Well, I think that each church, I think it depends, because I didn't realize this until recently, but some people just feel more comfortable going to a church where you need to look nice. They think it's more respectful. Like my brother.
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't feel comfortable going to a church where the pastor's in jeans and a t-shirt, because he personally
mm-hmm,
feels like it's disrespectful. But that's not for everybody.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean? But I think there's a difference in how we're dressing and in how we're treating people
mm-hmm,
that don't look the same.
Right.
Does that make sense?
That's
like,
what I
think
love
there's
about
a difference.
Southridge is we've got people that do come in and they're dressed, they have dresses or they have suits on, or, you know, not really suits, but they have like, you know, slacks and a jacket or something, because that's how they prefer to dress for church. But I love the mixture, the eclecticness of the people that attend here. There, I mean, you know, it's all across the spectrum. And no one looks down on anyone. Like, I don't look down on people who dress nice.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like, gosh, like, are
How
you
could
comfortable?
you wear that suit to church?
Well, I just am like, you know, you could be more comfortable at church. Like, but maybe that's how they're comfortable. I don't know.
I can't wear a tie.
Gosh,
it just feels like my daughter trying to strangle me all day. You know, she's not quite strong enough, but it's just strong enough to make you uncomfortable.
Does she do that often?
No. I'm leave me alone.
With you. Just messing with you.
Now, Megan, have you ever come across anybody that has made you feel like negatively because of maybe a certain way that you were talking, or maybe a conversation that you had, or like not so much on the outside, but they're judging you? Hey, you're a pastor's wife. I could see what's coming out of you, like what's on the inside, and they're kind of like trying to put you through the microscope, you know?
Not in a way that is unnecessary or unhelpful, or non-spiritual, unspiritual. I don't know what the word is. It's anytime someone has come to me like that, it's always been in a corrective but loving way. And I do appreciate that. Now, it's not comfortable in the beginning because I don't like it when people come at me. It's just, I'm not real big on feedback yet. I'm getting there.
You're working on it.
I'm working on it. But sometimes it can feel like an attack, but it's not. People have, and I say people, a lot of times it's Scott. He is like my biggest critic, but I say that like he loves me and he wants me to be successful in whatever I do.
He genuinely wants the best out of you.
So it's, but I have never, if anything has ever been said to me other than Scott or maybe someone on staff, it has not been done out of spite. It's not been done cruelly. It's not been, I mean, it's always been, you know, I love you. And so I just wanted to talk to you about this. But even that has been very minimal because I have that tight circle, you know, there's Scott and I, and then around that is our staff and staff families or staff spouses. And then there's the elders. So just like they are with Scott and they hold him accountable, it's kind of the same way with me as well. And that's the way that I like it. So.
Yeah. What about you? Has someone ever came up and just been like, pulled you off to the side and just said, you can't talk like that, or you can't do those things? Not necessarily focusing on like what you're wearing or how you're dressed or anything like that, but has someone made you feel like pretty bad because their expectation of a pastor's wife?
Yes, all the time. Well, not recently, but yes.
Yeah,
a lot.
I just did it here the other day.
It goes back
really.
to before. I mean, I would say something and I would get reprimanded, and I'd be like, I didn't even say anything like wrong.
Yeah.
Or my opinion on something was not the correct opinion to have. Or I remember specifically one time, I posted something, I like shared something about a mom breastfeeding a 5-year-old, and it showed the mom breastfeeding the 5-year-old. And I specifically remember this because something must have happened for the hurt to be there.
Yeah.
You can't post stuff like that. And I remember thinking, it's just a mom breastfeeding her kid. Like, this isn't wrong. Like, there's nothing wrong with this. But you're a pastor's wife now. You can't post stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it wasn't necessarily anything that I felt that I did. I mean, there was, like, I didn't cuss. And someone was like, you can't do that. You know what I mean? Like, like I did on our interview. Okay. Because I just remember, I have to keep reminding myself, like, I'm a human being. Like, I make mistakes. Mm-hmm. Just because I'm a pastor's wife, I know that I'm held to a higher standard, and that's okay because I know that. Yeah. But I'm still human. Yeah. Right? And so I have to remind myself of that when people do make those comments, and whether it be family or, I mean, people from other churches that we know or people from back home. It's just one of those things that's just, I don't know. I have to remind myself, like, I'm human, and I'll tell them too, like, I am not perfect. Like, I remember this one conversation I was having with a friend that I had met at First Assembly. Yeah. And we were talking, and she was telling me about how she had done drugs before. Right. And I was explaining to her that, like, well, this is my past. And so I was kind of explaining some of my past, and she just looked at me like, you're joking. She literally was like, but you have not done that. Like, she did not believe me at all. Like, she was like, there's no way that a pastor's wife has done any of this stuff. Yeah. And I was like, woman, I'm pretty sure that I've done worse things than you have. Okay. Like,
have you met Jared?
Like, you don't know who you're talking to.
I haven't as a pastor's wife, which, I mean, you know, some pastor's wives have, but
we're just, people look at us and they don't see us as like normal people.
Yeah. There's a certain expectation. It's the expectation of, gosh, it's like this expectation of perfection, this expectation of how I want, me personally, how I want to perceive someone who's in leadership. Like, and I don't want to know or hear about like the rough stuff in their life. Yeah. I this is not going to be exact, but I remember there was a conversation of you and I were sitting with someone, and you got mad and frustrated because you were like, we just need to quit talking about this and go help them. It was like a situation where we needed to go do something, like action, like there was action oriented. And you're like, we spend so much time talking about these things, and we just need to go pick up and do something, like go buy bottled water or whatever and hand it out to the homeless. I don't know what it was, but they were like, well, it's not that easy. You're like, but it is that easy. Like, it is that easy. Like, we spend so much time doing all this. And I just remember the looks that you got because you were just like, can we not just go buy some bottled water and just go give it to these homeless people that are like struggling in this heat or whatever it was? And I just remember like we just being frustrated, like like that conversation, like you and I was like, I can't believe that just happened. I was like, what just happened? Like people just got mad at us for like wanting to help people. No, but you can't do that because you can't be speaking up and just bringing logic into this situation because you're a pastor's wife. I felt like you got so many dirty looks because of that. And it was just like,
I don't even know what you're talking about, but I'm sure it's happened.
I mean, it was just like it was literally a $5 fix. And we wanted to people wanted to sit around and try to figure out how to do this, but they wanted to waste an hour trying to figure out how to do it. Whenever you can go buy a case of water for $5.
Yeah. I feel like, and here, there's this, take this for what it is. May sound a little bit like feminist. I don't care. But I feel like pastor spouses, and more specifically pastors' wives, as females, they are historically, I want to say historically, I don't want to say like right now, they are historically known for just being supportive of their husband.
Yeah.
They are historically known for not having an opinion. They're historically known for not ruffling feathers or making waves or anything like that. And so when someone, I mean, it's hysterical that like there's me and Erica in the room because actually Scott just texted me earlier and he's like, why you always got to be arguing on Facebook? So I'm like,
you're a pastor's wife. You can't do that.
I know. Sometimes you just, I am argumentative. I'm not going to say that I'm not. But there are some people in ministry, women specifically, who are more vocal and God has given them the ability of leadership, the passion of leadership, as well as the just passion in general for ministry, for serving, missional work, that kind of thing. And so a lot of people just are not used to that.
Well, I want to back this up by scripture of why they say this and why they have misinterpreted scripture. Okay. So in 1 Corinthians chapter 14, it says there's this whole big long list of it's called like a call to orderly worship. It's like an outline of how church should happen, right? Mm-hmm. And so it goes through all of these. You should get together, you should sing songs, someone should present some words, let 2 or 3 people prophesy, all these other different things. And then towards the end of this, it says women should be silent during the church meetings. It is not proper for them to speak. They should always be submissive, just as the law says. So they take this scripture and they go completely with, they run with it and don't even know the backstory or anything else like with the context of this scripture. Okay. Mm-hmm. So back then, whenever they would have church, the pastors, the speakers or whatever, they would preach in a completely different language that was only known to some of the educated men, okay? And so whenever they got together and they said, well, women shouldn't speak, is because they weren't understanding what was being said because they weren't taught the language that it was being preached in. So it wasn't for them to just continue to be silent and not do things in the church because that's completely wrong. I believe women should have a place in the church and they should be doing those things. But the reason that they were asked just to please be quiet is because they didn't understand the language that was being spoken and they didn't want to cause disruption from the people that did understand the language that was being preached.
Yeah.
And so people read this and they go, well, women don't have a place in church and they need to be submissive and they need to do these things that we say. We got to tell them what to do. And I'm sorry, that is absolutely, completely wrong. Like, you just can't do that. We all speak the same language here. We all speak an American dialect of English, right? Mm-hmm. You understand.
Yeah.
So you should be given the opportunities of everybody else and not be held to some standard and just say, hey, you've got to be submissive because you're a pastor's wife.
Yeah.
I think that's silly. And so that's where a lot of this frustration comes with so many women that are pastor's wife in ministry, is because it's this whole cultural thing that has just happened for so long because people have misinterpreted the Bible to say one thing, but they haven't studied and understood what it actually means.
Yeah.
I also think it's funny how, I don't know if you've noticed this or not, because you've been at Southridge, and Southridge is awesome. But
it is.
Pastor's wife tend to get more, like, say for instance, if Jared went out and Jared went drinking.
Hypothetical.
Totally.
And people found out at the church, right?
Yeah.
And if I went out drinking and then people found out about it at the church, I would have more severe consequences. And people would look at me completely differently than they would look at Jared. Do you feel that way here? I mean, probably not at Southridge, but I've definitely felt that, well, if he messes up, it's not that big of a deal. And if I mess up, it's like,
yeah,
like a big, like, blow up.
I think that it could be that for other things. I would hope that in most churches that the more severe consequence, and I really believe that this is how it is for most churches. That kind of action, the severe consequence would be on the pastor, because you are the one that is
the pastor.
The pastor. You are the one that is employed at the church.
Yeah.
And the wife or the spouse of the pastor would be, if that were the case for them, I feel like there is an accountability there, and we do have to come at everything knowing, yes, he is the pastor or she is the pastor, but the spouse is equally, in a lot of respects, accountable for their actions. I think that sometimes a pastor's spouse is dealt with differently, kind of, maybe offering, because they're not employed at the church.
Yeah.
Now, what they do affects the pastor's employment and their ability to minister to people. But I feel like here at Southridge and at other churches, the pastor is dealt with more severely because they're the one pastoring people. And,
did you know that women go to Bible school to find pastor husbands? To be a pastor's wife?
Nope. It's not where I found Scott.
Dude, that's a thing.
I found Scott at WVU.
I remember.
In a ditch.
Didn't find a ditch. You probably found me in a ditch, honestly.
No, I found that out after like a year or two of being a pastor's wife. And I remember thinking, why would somebody want to go through this?
Yeah.
It was that bad for me. And I remember thinking, why would somebody go to school, to college, to find a husband in ministry to go through this? But I mean, it was, at the time, it was just a rough patch of where we're at. But even now, thinking about that, like, I would not allow my kid. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't be able to tell her no if she was an adult. Mm-hmm. But I would not be like, yeah, Ryan, go to this Bible school so you can find a husband that's a pastor.
Yeah. Has there been any instances where say you've been around other pastors and their wives, and there's almost been kind of like a comparison, maybe somebody like kind of touting or bragging or something along those lines, to where they've just been like, I'm better?
So I actually was thinking about this. Like I said, for the most part, throughout we've been in ministry for 10 years. And in the 10 years of ministry, no congregation member has ever made me feel directly like pressure or anything like that. However, it was totally random. A bunch of us were out, and this kind of has to do with like friends in ministry, like friends in church. I don't want to say friends in ministry. It's friends in the church. We were out to dinner with several of the girls from church, and we were just talking about random stuff. And one of them mentioned, at the time, there were two of us that were like, our husbands were on staff. And so we were like both technically, like we were pastors' wives. And so one of the congregation people that was talking in this conversation, she said, I was just talking to this person the other day, and they said, man, you are just the perfect picture of a pastor's wife. And they were not talking to me. They were talking to the other one. And there are like stark differences between me and this other girl, which I love dearly. But just differences. And at that moment, it made me feel like, one, I was very upset at this person that even said anything, because I'm like, hello, I'm right here.
Why would you say that?
Like, I am sitting here and you're not talking to me or about me.
Yeah.
And two, I was like, there are clearly differences between me and this girl. And so from that point, this was pre-COVID. It's like our measurement of time. So this was like 2019. And up until about a year ago, I struggled hardcore with comparing myself to this person and even other people, like spiritually, emotionally, maturity, all of these things, like even like my marriage, even though, Scott and I have a great marriage, we fight a lot, but we also we just are in sync. We get along really well. And like, I like how you always say, like, we make hell nervous, because we do. I mean, we love what we do. We love our church. We love our community. And so I think that, we're just great together. We're great in ministry, but I still struggled with comparing myself to this person because of that one comment. And it's like, you have no idea. You may be complimenting somebody. I don't know how that was a compliment in that moment, but you may think that you're complimenting someone or whatever it is, but
those
it's like it stuck to me like saltwater taffy.
Oh, I know. I deal with that all the time, just because my brother is a worship pastor at a mega church, and it's one of those things, like, you can't help but always think like, man, like I'm nowhere near as good as him, because I'm not at some mega church, and I've got 12 employees or whatever underneath me that are doing everything I ask them to do, and they're paying me loads of money because I'm at a church of
well, it makes
10,
you
15,000
question
people. Your
calling. It makes you question your gifting. It makes you question everything that you were once confident about at some point or another.
For sure.
When God called you and you knew, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is what God wants me to do. Yeah. And then just that one comment, it's like you question everything from that point forward, and even everything from the past. Yep. It is crazy what words can do to you mentally.
Oh yeah. That's why I think, like, I all the time I stress the importance of prayer, not only just for us as individuals, but also for people to be praying for leadership in church. Is because we're under a constant attack all the time. I deal with tons of insecurity. I'm dealing with some things right now that Erica and I are working through and talking through. Nothing in our marriage, but just for me as an individual. And wanting to grow in leadership, but there's and I feel like there's things holding me back. Okay. But in reality, there's nothing holding me back except for these lies that I've bought into, that I believe. Mm-hmm. That's just who I am. I believe those things,
Yeah.
I deal with anxiety and I deal with worry, but I say all that to say that I stress the importance of people to pray for leadership and taking the time to genuinely pray for them. Don't just sit there and just say, I appreciate it, but I want you to like fight for us whenever you pray for us, because there's so much spiritual warfare that is taking place. Because if we can be tripped up as a pastor, then the whole momentum and steam that is behind the church that we have going for us can be slowed down detrimentally.
Right.
If not come to a complete halt. And nobody wants to see a church's effectiveness cease to exist.
Yeah.
And so praying for leadership, praying for their minds, praying for their hearts, praying for their spouses, praying for their kids, doing all those things and taking the time to actually and legitimately petition for them at the feet of Jesus each and every moment that you have is I think one of the largest keys to success for a church.
Yeah. And I will say this about Southridge and the people of Southridge is that I feel the prayers from people here.
Yeah.
I remember several years ago kind of being in a place where it was like, am I seen? Am I even like, does anyone even really know me? Does anyone bother to know me? Does anybody want to know me? And now it comes with a lot of maturity and growing and things like that, because I struggled even like well before this particular story that I told. But as a stay-at-home mom, because like Scott and I were married in 2012, just before, like 6 months before we were married, he went into full-time ministry.
Yeah.
And we had our first kid a little over a year after we were married. And I became a stay-at-home mom. As a person who is very social and really thrives on being around people and like being in the center of the party, it was debilitating to be at home, because I started to want to be at home. I started to want to be by myself, and being by myself caused a lot of mental just chaos that ensued. And it was, I was doing it all to myself, but it was because I let the enemy creep into that little crack. So I totally understand what you're saying by being prayed up, by making sure that you're in the word, but also realizing that there are people praying for you. You are not in this by yourself.
Yeah.
So it's important to pray to make sure that you are developing yourself spiritually, but it's also important to know that there are people in your corner fighting for you. For sure.
I think that one of the things too, for just staff and pastors' wives, is personal relationships are sometimes tricky to navigate, because there's a lot of things that are extremely confidential, because people trust us, and they look to us for leading and guiding them and navigating these tough situations in their life. Have you found, Erica, that just having close relationships can be difficult because you are a pastor's wife?
Yes. Well, I don't know about here. Here I've had a lot of issues with the pastor's wife thing here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel I remember the first time it happened to me, I was having a conversation about something that happened, and I just made a comment about, I don't remember what it was, like, why couldn't she just pick it up or something like that? And I was talking about the pastor's wife. Like, why couldn't she just pick it up? to another pastor's wife. Like, it was something that just didn't make sense to me. So I was just like, why couldn't she just do it? Like, why do I have to go up there and do this? Why couldn't she just do it? And so, and this was just me frustrated, right? You're frustrated. You say things when you're frustrated. It wasn't anything like major or anything like that. The next thing I know, the lead pastor is calling me. Why did you say this about my wife? And I'm like, whoa, like, this is way out of hand. Like, what are you talking about? Like, this is what happened. This is what was said. It wasn't anything that was like you needing to call me. Like, this is ridiculous. And so at that minute, I thought, I cannot talk to people. Like, I have to be very careful, even with other pastors' wives, what I say and who I can be myself with, because that shouldn't have been an issue. Like, that shouldn't have been something that was like, you run and tattletale on me because I said, I mean, it was so insignificant. And so at that moment, I remember thinking, I cannot have like close friends because my husband's going to get fired because I decided to say that his wife should have just picked up the trash. Like, it was one of those things that I was just like, what is going on? And it is lonely when you don't have friends.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And when you're a pastor, which is another reason why people should pray, because it is lonely. And that's why you see, I mean, I don't know if you looked at the statistics, but like leadership in churches, like divorces are happening and suicides are happening. You find pastors that are committing suicide, and pastors who with children that are their children's are committing suicide or whatever the issue is that, you know, is happening. I mean, it's because being in ministry is lonely. Yeah. It's not like you can just do whatever and say whatever and all is happy-go-lucky. You have to pick your words and pick your friends and be very, very, very selective of who is in your inner circle.
Yeah, because, I mean, there's always somebody that wants to know something.
That's very true.
Let's be real. I am probably one of the nosiest people on the face of the planet. So I am in that category. Just have to put that out there.
Yeah.
I have been working on gossip. I'll just say that. I have struggled as a young adult with gossip, like probably since high school. But that is something that I'm actively working on because I am naturally nosy and I want to know everything because I don't like missing out on stuff. Yeah. But it's also very toxic and unhealthy.
So. Is it because of Scott's message that he preached like a couple months ago?
He always is stepping on my toes when he preaches. Like, it is ridiculous. I think
stepping on your toes.
He does, man. I need steel toe boots.
Well, I can't speak for Scott, but I can speak for myself and the amount the amount of support that I've gotten just for being in ministry for you. Like, I know that I would have given up a long time ago if it wasn't for you. So I love you tremendously. And I know that you support your husband in that same aspect. And I know that he feels the same way because you could see it as well. And it doesn't go unnoticed. And even for like, because we have 2 female pastors on our staff. I know that Paul and Anthony have probably been in the same situation, in the same boat, to where things that they have done has been underneath scrutiny and viewed at with a microscope, trying to pick apart and try to look at things. Even though it may not happen here, it has happened here. You know, it happens everywhere.
Yeah.
But I want to say thank you. I thank you so much for going on this journey with me.
Well, I love you.
I love you too. Sorry, I didn't.
You're welcome, Scott.
You're welcome, Scott.
All right, mystery meat time.
Oh, geez.
I love mystery meat.
I told Anna before we did the last one that we've added some would you rather.
Did she bring her casserole to this last one?
Yeah.
I want her casserole.
You have to watch it. Go back and watch it, because this one's coming out a week after.
Yeah.
We recorded them in the same day. All right. This is going to be one of the would you rather questions. I already know it. All right. Mystery meat time. What is the... No, this isn't a would you rather, but this is my question. What is the weirdest thing a guest has done at your house? Oh.
The weirdest?
Yeah, what's the weirdest thing? You invite a group of people over to your house. Somebody's done something completely, and you're like, what the heck? What's the weirdest thing they've done?
When I was a teenager, I came home, and my brother's friend was sleeping in my bed, and he wasn't home. He just came over.
Oh, one
needed
of his
to play.
friends.
Needed
Why
a
do I
place
feel like
to
your
crash.
life is so much more interesting than mine?
It was Paul, and he was sleeping in my bed, and I was like, "Get out of my bed!"
Yeah.
That's the craziest thing I can think of. Coming home, and my brother's friend that was in college was sleeping in my bed, and my brother wasn't home. I remember thinking, just go to your own house, Paul.
I find it really weird. Maybe I do weird things whenever I go over to people's houses.
You do.
So I may be on a couple of their lists.
Yeah, I feel like I'm that person.
Well, I just want to dig through people's stuff.
Oh, yes. People lead interesting
I just want to see how
lives.
they organize stuff. I want to see like what kind of like pots and pans they use, and I don't.
You're like that at the doctor too. I have to be like, stop doing
Oh,
that.
yeah, I
Gosh,
dig-
the dentist's office,
Doctor's
Dude, I dig
gonna
through
walk
all their
in.
stuff.
all the tools. So,
But I also do weird things whenever I have people over at the house too. We've had people over at the house, and I look at Erica and I stand up completely. We'll be in the middle of playing a board game, right? And we invited these people to come over and hang out.
And he just goes to bed.
Yep. I'm like, all right, it's time for me to go to bed. And they're like, wait, what?
He just leaves
I'm done.
me.
I'm
leaves
done.
me
I was like, I'm
there.
done.
Oh my god!
And I think it's just because I'm extremely awkward in social situations, but like whenever I get overwhelmed because there's an aspect of my personality that is just like major introvert, like I just want to be done with whatever is happening.
Yeah.
And so,
But that doesn't count because that's not someone else doing something at our house.
no, I know that. I don't know of anything that anybody's
I
ever
don't
done.
either. I did the weird stuff.
Oh,
Like-
I know some things like whenever people helped us move into the house in Alabama and it was like extremely muddy, and then some ding dong like didn't take off his shoes like coming through the house and left like these clay footprints all over the place.
That's not weird.
No,
That is weird. I mean, at least I was
It's dirty.
Yeah.
I
That's not weird.
used to like go to our, like when my parents, like we had life group when I was little. My parents were in a life group. And I remember going to their houses and like hiding stuff. Like I would take their toothbrushes out of the bathroom and like hide them. And they would always know that it was me. They would call my parents and they'd be like, "Can you ask Megan where she put our toothbrushes?"
Oh no.
Or like so my grandma used to give like
I'd never invite y'all. I would be
That's
like,
so awesome. Every
my
time I
grandma
go to your
used
house,
to
I'm gonna do that
give
now.
$20 in $2 bills for Christmas. These little packets of $2 bills, and they were real. But so she would always get them from the bank, and she just have them in her house, like they were in a specific spot. That way, she knew where to get them. This is so weird, and it baffles me every time I hear this story. But evidently, one time I found the stack of $2 bills, took one to my aunt's house that was like a mile down the road, and hid it underneath the blankets of a baby doll bed.
Just because.
I didn't even keep it. I just took it and hid it in another house.
I'm gonna do that to you every
like
time
in
I
the
go to
same
your
day,
house.
like people
Yeah.
couldn't find you,
Yeah.
and they're like, "Where's Megan?"
No. Like we were at my grandma's house, and then like we would just go over to my aunt's house because they lived near each other.
Yeah.
And I just like took that and took it over to her house and hid it.
Can you imagine like if you picked up and moved for some reason, and then like this whole time like you've been struggling to find your toothbrushes, and you keep like some random kid has just been stashing them in the same place, and then you start packing up a room, and you're like, why is there like 30 toothbrushes underneath this whatever, you know? Could you imagine that? Can you imagine if somebody like moved and then they were like, why would somebody put this here? Why would somebody take spoons from the kitchen and then they go hide them in like behind the toilet or whatever?
And I was thinking that Samara slept on her couch with Dixie was weird.
That's not that weird.
That was a weird thing. That's the only weird thing I could think of. Because I thought, why would she sleep on I have a Great Dane.
Yeah.
So, and I have a couch. Like, it's like a 3-seater couch. Like, it's not big. What are those couches? What are they called?
It's a pull-out bed.
It's a normal size couch.
It's got a sleeper bed in it.
Well, I guess that would be kind of weird. Like, people who house sit.
But she slept on the couch with Dixie. And it's not a big couch. Like, with a big dog, like there was no room for her to sleep on the couch.
My dog's 140 pounds.
And I remember thinking, why wouldn't she just like sleep in the bed?
Maybe I'm just weird, but when I used to house sit for people, like I would take the master bedroom with all the stuff, like the master bathroom with the heated floors.
She slept
and
on
like I
the
would make
couch
that my
with Dixie.
palace.
She slept. She told me she felt bad for Dixie because she has a gate.
That's so sweet.
She can't leave the
That's
downstairs.
why then. She just felt bad.
She's got such a heart of gold. Every time she's helped him watch the dog if we go somewhere.
She's the sweetest.
But yeah, I mean, I get it.
I feel like that just did not go the way that you had planned with that question.
No. Well, I didn't know if anybody had any crazy stories about somebody doing something weird in their house.
Nope.
Our kids aren't teenagers yet.
Yeah. Yeah, wait till we have like their friends over. I'm sure there's going to be like some weird things.
Remember that one time? That's what's going to happen.
Remember that one time. Well, you remember that one time whenever we wrapped up this episode of a Pastor's Potluck podcast?
The Pastor's
Peace
Wife's
out.
Potluck podcast.
Oh, yeah. The Pastor's Wife.
Toodles.
Dude, that's what I'm going to use as the episode title.
Boomski.
Hey, thank you so much for watching. We hope that you have a wonderful weekend. And we will see you guys next time. Peace out. Thank you so much for listening in with us today. We really appreciate it. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You can also follow us on social media, on Facebook, Instagram. And you can also watch the video version of this on YouTube as well. All you have to do is search up the Pastor's Potluck Podcast. From all of us here, we want to say thank you, and we'll see you next week.